So, hello everybody, good afternoon. Thank you very much for being here. Thank you very much for Philippe for the invitation. I would immediately call my colleagues of the panel to come and join me here in the podium. My colleague Alessandro Lazzari from JRC ISPRA, our colleague Luc van der Berg, representing the Brexit project from Sensenlec, and our colleague Martin de Maupeou from the CEIS, Belgium. Please join me here. Feel free to choose wherever you would like to sit. So I'll make a very brief introduction, because I think that this is going to be a very interactive session, and we surely hope so. Feel free to keep the very informal tone, and in between the presentations we will have time for discussion, and at the end also. So I would like to just speak for a few minutes to convey to you my big passion on standardization that has already some years now, and the fact that honestly what we need to consider is that standardization is a living process, and it's basically in everything that we do. I think that our society depends on the standardization for basically all that we consider the civilization benefits that we have. The fact that I'm here speaking and that you're understanding me is a product of standardization, because otherwise there would be no agreement on spoken or written language. So it really is something that we depend upon for all our interactions and all our construction of knowledge in today's society. In security, standardization has a number of huge advantages. It provides interoperability. It provides standard protocols of operation. It enhances cross-border, facilitates and enhances cross-border assistance, multilateral aid, international cooperation, sharing of lessons learned and best practices. So definitely in a critical area such as security, standardization is extremely important. And although security per se is not an European Commission mandate, as you know, it's a national responsibility. It relies with the member states. We do know, and we can see that everybody will buy into the sharing of good practices and the harmonization of protocols if they see a need for it and if they see a definite advantage from it. So there is a lot of interest from the member states, from the national security authorities, in making sure that there are harmonized protocols, even though they're not so obliged. That's what I want to say. Coming back to the actual, or to the focus of today's panel, that will be very much well highlighted by the speakers, we are here to talk about pre-normative and foresight research. So, not exactly the standardization process, the core standardization, because that is a consensus process that should take into consideration all the stakeholders and all the delegates that are involved. But the aspect of how can we help from the security field in paving the way for the standardization committees to work. So how can we, from the JRC, from the different research institutes, from our institutions, how can we make sure that the data that's available for the standardization technical committees is the best that it can be, and it also helps giving some direction to the standardization process. And there in the JRC we have quite a number of activities that we've put at the service of the standardization community to facilitate their work, and I'll mention just a few. We had a very interesting, very long project, very well participated, on verifying the performance of radiological and nuclear detection. It's called the ITRAP, Illicit Traffic Radiological Performance Assessment. And this project had the interest of being on a voluntary basis to extend it to all the manufacturers of detection equipment, and we were contacted and we received equipment from more than 30 manufacturers that wanted to be in the project and wanted to volunteer to have their equipment assessed. And from there were a lot of conclusions that we have issued in a variety of reports. And what was interesting is that you saw different audiences having a different interest in there. And that's another message that I wanted to convey to you. The pre-normative research will interest different audiences in different way. It will interest the researchers, of course, because they want to advance the knowledge. They will interest the manufacturers because they want to benchmark themselves. It will interest the research policymakers because they want to know what they should be putting in their calls for proposal. It would interest the policymakers to know what should be in their targets for their legislative actions. Then another example that's a bit of a different one, we've established with DigiHome an interesting product that's in between standardization and policy implementation, which is a CBRN e-glossary. And I strongly encourage you to go look for it. It's an open source document, and it's both a very nice terminology database. It's a glossary, so it defines every relevant term in CBRN-E, and at the same time a very nice pedagogical tool because it is translated into 24 EU member state languages. So in one entry you have, for example, chlorine. You can change the description of and the framing of that chemical agent in 24 languages, and you can use it for your training purposes. And then finally, a more recent project that highlights how this communication between research and standardization should be bidirectional. We are now launching a new project called STAIR for Security. And this new project is based on the concept that both research can benefit standardization and vice versa. So it will create a platform in which questions can be entered either from the standardization bodies or from the researchers regarding the process of standardization, the results of projects that can relate to areas of the technical committees of standardization. It will be a one-stop entry for both sides of the process. So with this, and so that I don't delay anymore the speakers that are in the highlight today, I would then ask Mr. Luc van den Berg to start the presentation. Mr. Luc has joined the CENELEC in 1990. He has worked for several years in ICT standards and currently works in the Market Perspectives and Innovation Department of CEN, linking research and innovation projects with standardization. And he will be talking about the Bridget 2 project. Go ahead.
So on the agenda it says Ying Lao, but Ying could not participate today for personal reasons, so she asked me to give the presentation instead. It was said I work in the innovation department in CENELEC Management Center, hence why I do have also knowledge of this project, because it's a project that I am in charge of in the CENELEC Management Center to look after what happens. And I don't know what happens here. Okay, bridge it, bridge something, bridge the gap between standardization, innovation, and research communities. It's Bridget 2, the project I'm talking here for. That's because there has been a Bridget 1. And so we are now going to take further some of the things that weren't addressed in Bridget 1 in Bridget 2. So this is the table of contents of the presentation, something on Bridget 1, then what Bridget 2 is about. I will mention 2 studies that were specifically taking place in Bridget 2, subcontracted studies. I will be briefly telling about one of the studies, colleague there, Martin, is going to talk about the second study, and then at the end it will say, where can you find out more about us. So, Bridget 1, there is a hyperlink behind the conference video, but I won't try it out. That was, you can all, when you have the slides, you can all play it for you. It is 6 minutes long. It's about the conference that we organized October 2014 at the end of the Bridget 1 conference, well-attended conference, Bridget 1 project, well-attended conference, close to 400 participants. Main objective of the conference to create awareness, to raise awareness on what was at stake and the need to bring both communities closer together. In the Bridget 1 project, in terms of deliverables, most of the deliverables were kind of tools and information for our own community in Saint-Senelec. So the objective being that in a world where standardization is increasingly stated as being an added value of research and innovation projects because it will create or it will increase the impact of the innovation project, it's of course important that we from the standardization community, we can respond to what we then thought would be a growing number of approaches by project proposers to us to help them on standardization. An idea that indeed then translated into an increasing number of requests to us. So in Bridget 1, we wanted to build capacity ourselves inside our system. Bridget 2 is specifically aiming to get us now known better in the research and innovation community, and it will do so by doing a number of things that we think that the community needs. So, what is the aim? The overall aim, still to some extent the same as Bridget 1, to strengthen this interrelationship between all communities, which can be done by increasing the understanding, the awareness within that community on the added value of standards, on the value of standards in support of the creation of market impact for their work. Also to support the integration of standardization in research and innovation projects. We have this hope that in an increasing number of projects there will be a standardization-related work package where one of our members ideally can join in order to progress that standardization work. If we want to reach out to the research and innovation community, we need to provide them tools and instruments for their improved involvement in standardization. Tools can be information tools, but tools can also be the workshop agreement that is maybe not sufficiently known in that community, and we want to present it as I would say, a valid pre-standardization route that can be done usually within the duration of a project. And so overall, we want to make us more visible within that community. So a number of impacts, better known, greater awareness among the community. Also in relation to Horizon Europe, it was already the case in Horizon 2020 that we saw that there was explicit references to standardization and the value of standardization in certain calls. We want to have this also to be the case in Horizon Europe, so we want to integrate the references to standards more generally, more homogeneously in that new future framework program. And more generally, we want to see standardization recognized as a valid mechanism inside this innovation life cycle. So stepping a bit outside of the pure only projects that are produced, financed by public money, we also want standardization to be known as being a valid supporting tool to create market impact within innovations, even if they are not just the sheer result of a project. So, Bridget 2, 10 members of CEN. You see there their abbreviations: Germany, France, the Netherlands, Denmark, Romania, Bulgaria, Spain, Italy, Ireland, and Austria. Together with then me from the CCMC, from the Standardisation Management Center. It's a project financed by EU and EFTA under the framework partnership agreement we have with EU and EFTA. And so the project focuses on the community, the research and innovation community needs. So it is stepping a bit outside of this previous emphasis, which was strengthening our own processes. The main activities, and they are called actions there. First, the action 1 goes a bit against what I said before, that we had Bridget 1 strengthening in our own capacity as a system, and that we would focus now in Bridget 2 on the research and innovation community, because action 1 goes further on this ambition to have as many as possible of our members really knowledgeable and involved in research and innovation projects, for instance, financed under Horizon 2020. So this is a continuation, so to say, of Bridget 1. It will be leading to a number of training tools, training videos that can be shown at a national level, where also people come, people move. It's important to keep them constantly educated about how they can, as a national standards body, give a useful support to these projects and how they indeed can make some business model also for them from it. The action 2 is about further understanding what are the needs of this community. Needs in terms of processes, needs in terms of information, needs in terms of why do they think, don't they think of a standards body of SEN to involve in their project, that sort of thing, so needs. That's going to be the part of the study that I'm going to present later. Action 3 is about specifically looking at the previous framework programs and at the relationship to standardization in those framework programs. So it is looking into, it's a study into how were in previous calls, in response to previous calls, the projects that were participating there, how did they address standardization and how did they consider the added value, yes or no, of a national standards body in their project as being something that they could defend. Action 4 is about generally tools in terms of information, in terms of videos, to create or further create the awareness among this community of researchers and innovators. And 5 is about dissemination. Dissemination specifically translated into national events that will take place, 10 national events, so in the 10 participating countries, and also a national event, no, not a national event, a European event here in Brussels at the end of the project later on in November. So those are the 5 actions that are under the Bridget 2 project. It's a 2-year project. We are halfway through the project. We have the 2 studies on which I will present later on one of the studies. We also have done an inventory of needs of our own standards bodies. This inventory will then be the basis of what are we going to teach them on, at least those that are not really fully involved yet, what are we going to teach them on so that they understand how they can take up that role. And also it's an inventory of existing and new tools and tools for the R&I community. That's because there is already existing a lot of information at the national level. We want to see what can we kind of Europeanize in order so to also that it's used also in other countries, if necessary translated in the national language, if there is a need for this, and that sort of things. And so we will now have, so in the 2nd year, develop this information to the community, and we will have the events that I mentioned. So 2 studies. The study I will talk about is the study on the needs in regard to standardization of the R&I community. And Martin will then later on talk on the study on standardization in the framework programs. The study that I'm talking about, it was based on some 60 interviews, so on average 5 or a little bit more per participating country. And that was then augmented by some 160 questionnaires that were filled in and sent back to the company who was doing this survey. And so in terms of report, the final report was sent to me just earlier this week, and so we will make sure that it is available in the coming month from our website. But so what are the main findings? And I must say this is not rocket science what the main findings are. An important finding is that in terms of standardization, we find out that it is often, it's not a management priority. So it means that the last bullet point, that decisions regarding the user development of standards, that it's often based on an individual that has indeed his desire to contribute or sees the need to contribute. And if he is taking the lead, then management and R&D departments may follow, but this is not always the case. In terms of reaching out to that community, you have these days, it's, what is it, things that I don't know much about, Twitter and all these things, social media. That community, they look for targeted individual communication channels and not these broadcasting methods. So it requires some, from our national bodies, that they build relationships with their national research and innovation community. It goes back to my previous talk this morning, where I said that our main structure, it's national delegation based, so also in terms of reaching out to that community, the task is there with our national members to do so. Something that is quite typical is that, of course, when you are a bigger enterprise, you have the resources, you know where to go to, you have even in many cases, standardization department. But we also need to be particularly vigilant that we give, I would say, that we care about the needs of small and medium enterprises, because for them, it's often not clear how they can contribute or how easy it is to contribute to standardization. And then keep on repeating a clear message regarding standardization benefits. That is, we should step away from having these generic statements of standards are beneficial to European economy. No, an SME will wish to know about a concrete example where a single standard made a difference for another SME in terms of being able to market its invention, to market its innovation. Then there were some specific, so based on the respondents, people were then, are you directly involved? So are you a participant in a project, or are you a government? And so here are some of the main results from that, from those questions that were asked. Academia and research institutions, yes, standards, they consider them relevant, but it depends on the TRL. That means they are less or not relevant for basic research, but more for applied research. And a problem, and that's a problem that is not only coming from this study, it's something that I hear since a long time. The research and innovation community, people from research and technology organizations, people from universities, when they contribute to standardization, the end product is an anonymous document. There is no, the authors are not there. So it is difficult often for them to build further their academic career on the fact that they are involved in standards creation. So we need to find a way that we find young people happily participating in standardization, because they know that it will also benefit their career that is not where the focus is not on standardization. In terms of small businesses, they see standards as a requirement to access the market, but they don't necessarily think that it will speed up their access, reduce time to market. Of course, it's no surprise, they have a resource problem. They don't have the time often to send their people to the standardization meetings. And so for the large businesses, typically there's no such a problem, and they know where to go to and they have sufficient staff. And in terms of government, and this is national governmental ministries, etc., representatives that were interviewed or that were responding, there we see a different, some respondents say yes, we think standardization should be promoted and is important, and others leave it just to the researcher whether they wish to see to be involved or not. So some officials tend to be more involved than others, but from the other stakeholders, there is the statement that they think that government should be paying attention to standards, because governments, in the creation of them of a level playing field, and they should promote standardization as being necessary also for research and innovation outcomes. The intermediaries then, which are often the point from which we are then reached out to the national research and innovation community, they also are in favor of clarity and common approaches in standards, because of course that's easier for them than to explain the benefits to the community to whom they have to take that active role in informing on the values of standards. If you want to know more on the Bridget 2 project, the URL there general on the SAN website, but there's not much there, but you will find from there the link to this LinkedIn group. And there is not much there yet, because the 2 studies that we will be talking about here will be published at the end of the year. So as soon as they are published, of course, they will be made available from that website. I mentioned the big, I hope, big European conference that we will be organizing here in Brussels. So save the date, 13th of November. And so I was participating here on behalf of René Linder, who is the project leader of Bridget 2. And you also see now Ying Ying, how she looked like. She is the leader of the action too. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Luc. That was, I think, very interesting, and more results will come, but already you have very interesting recommendations and very practical insight on what moves the people towards standardization. I would open the floor for a question or 2 now. Yes, go ahead.
It's a question back to your opening address.
Yeah.
Is JRC, CBRNE glossary, compatible with the SEN CBRNE glossary? Are they identical? And if not, which one do I use?
They are not identical, because they are being, the consensus groups that are constructing them are different, so they're not supposed to be identical. But the CBRNE glossary of the Commission is fully taken into consideration by the group which is working in SEN for reaching a CBRNE glossary. So for sure there will be more overlap than other. In some senses, you know, when you construct a glossary, you also have to decide what are the relevant terms that you want to put in. And so there is a cutoff that you have to define a little bit arbitrarily, or with informed opinion, but you have to say this is a relevant term for CBR and security, and that isn't. Sometimes the frontier is a bit blurry. And therefore there may be more terms that are included in the SAN glossary than what we have. But in terms of concepts, they will be overlapping for common terminology. Yes?
There are lots of vocabulary that will be coming, but we just take what we need. We'd rather have less, but used by everyone, than all the details that are needed for scientists in order to do research. So the answer to your question is, which one should I use, is what is your purpose? Do you need it for research or do you need it to improve a security policy? So you would use either one or the other.
Innovation as well.
Innovation, so it should be margaritas.
Thank you very much. Any questions more for our speaker? If not, I do have a question. I'll make use of my privileged position. You talked a little bit about what enhances the interest in standards by the end users, by the industry, etc. Very briefly, just about the SMEs. Is there anything in the Bridget project really addressing how can we increase the uptake of the standards by the end users, by the industry? Or if not in the Bridget, other actions in SEN?
We do promote or tend to promote the workshop agreement as a doable end result of a research innovation project. Of course, what we do have to ensure is that these are not put on the shelf in order to then be I would say, be thrown away after 3 or 6 years when they expire. So there needs to be, and that is part of the innovation strategic plan that we have agreed in Standardisation, it is to at least have ensure that as many as possible of those workshop agreements continue then their life, subject to the necessary changes, as a de jure standard, or if not possible, immediately maybe as a technical specification that is so supported by a number of our national bodies. Inside the Bridget 2 project as such, our main objective would be to promote the value that the fact that something was brought to standardization had on the market potential of an innovation. Something, I saw the example, for instance, presented to me in Austrian standards. They did win some concours, some competition in which they had this invention where there was the potential to read barcodes and when doing, to judge how far it was away. And so that was kind of offering the possibility for having a completely new manufacturing chain. But it would require the change of the standard in JTC1. And so that entity, they were participating then in standardization work, and they were telling on how this was enabling this invention to then also start to be used in assembly lines of other companies. And I think it's, if we come forward with this sort of concrete cases, that it will be clear to the SMEs that for them, and there is value to also first to make themselves aware of what standards are, and then also to seek to contribute. And in terms of making it easier for SMEs to contribute, we have got several projects in the past where the Commission was helping us in order to produce material for SMEs. So there exists, I would say, an explanatory toolkit on SMEs in I don't know how many languages, between 15 and 20 languages. There exists also a guide to the standards writer to enable, well, not to enable, to make sure that the standards writer has information on how to avoid writing standards that are really incomprehensible to the SMEs. So to kind of change a bit the way the standards are drafted. Don't ask me how the detail of these recommendations are, but so we have got in Standardisation in the past already activities to educate the SME and then also to get the SMEs involved in our work.
Thank you very much. So I would go forward then to my dear colleague, Alessandro Lazzari, who's here to talk a little bit about a flagship project of the JRC, the EarnSIP, European Reference Network of Critical Infrastructure Protection. Alessandro has a PhD in Computer Multimedia and Telecommunication Engineering. He was a lecturer in legal informatics at the Specialization School of Law in Salento. And he's now coordinating the EarnSIP initiative at JRC ISPRA. Go ahead.
Thank you very much, Margarita. Thank you very much to my colleagues for inviting me over. It's a pleasure and an honor to be with you after a long time. And yes, I'm here to talk about the EarnSIP and how the EarnSIP is addressing issues of pre-standardization at EU level. I think I have to use this. Yes. The EarnSIP is running, just for your information, the EarnSIP is running since 2009, entered into the exploitation phase in 2012. Since then, the EarnSIP has produced, thanks to the thematic group that are at the core of the EarnSIP, something along 52 deliverables, addressing different issues related to pre-standardization and for fostering the development of innovative and competitive security solutions. The EarnSIP has been created specifically to support also the policy development. Therefore, the EarnSIP is providing support to the EPSIP, the European Programme for Critical Infrastructure Protection, to the Action Plan on CBRNE, and also to the research in explosive detection. I said thematic group, and I said pre-normative issues. In fact, we have something that is very similar to a technical committee. We have this thematic group. They are composed of experts volunteering to address these issues and to help the union and the stakeholders in the union develop more advanced security solutions for our critical infrastructures. Up to now, in 2018 and 2019, we have running 7 thematic groups. And these thematic groups are, let's say, a verticalization in very specific field of critical infrastructure protection. You have to imagine that along all the years, the EarnSIP has managed to put together something like more than 400 experts coming from 18 member states and more than 200 organizations. All these experts meet in these thematic groups. They look like very close to a technical committee, but without, you know, the boundaries of a technical committee that have a very specific task. They are a little more exploratory, they have less boundary, they have a work program to pursue in very specific fields, and there they have to produce new knowledge regarding potential gaps in research, in standardization, and also documents that can help both the policymakers or the operators of critical infrastructure in their daily life cycle. As I said, recommendation for standardization and research activities, recommendation in support of EU policy, and guidance for infrastructure operators. Very often some of these guidance can be also seen as an instrument for bringing harmonization and also quality monitoring in the procedures that are used in critical infrastructure. Therefore, they very often can be then turned into proper standards. We have some example of that. I will run quickly through some of the achievements that the EarnSIP group have put in place so far in the recent time. I strongly encourage you to browse on the EarnSIP website where all these deliverables are stored and available for download. I want to highlight that 98% of them are white, in the sense they are publicly available online. Very few, extremely few of them have been marked or not published on the internet because they could contain some information that was better not to disclose. So all the knowledge produced from the EarnSIP is available online. I encourage you to access it. As you can see, we have 7 running thematic groups. I wanted to highlight also the partners, so the DGs that together with the EarnSIP, and so the DG JRC are running the EarnSIP, and in which fields we have collaboration with DG Home before, of course, the DG Home D2, Terrorism and Radicalization, and DG Connect, because we are also providing support to the recently published Cybersecurity Act that established the EU cybersecurity certification framework. Therefore, we have these running thematic groups. Each of them is a verticalization in a very specific field. As you can see, we have chemical and biological detection, weapon and explosive threats, radiological and nuclear threats, physical security, and cyber security. Just some of the achievement. One of the recently established group that is working in the area of chemical and biological threats is related to drinking water. This group has put together a number of experts that has discussed the need to create a document that has to complement the operator safety plan with an operator security plan, so as to target the deliberate chemical or biological contamination of drinking water. This document is expected by March 2019 and is a direct guidance to operator. Therefore, this group clearly highlighted that there was a gap in the water treatment facilities life cycle. It was too much focused on safety, which of course is very important. But since we are living very tough time, it is also important to address the issue of security of water, because someone may be well-intentioned to, deliberately contaminate water. Therefore, they are in the way of producing a guidance for water security plan. Again, in chemical and biological field, another thematic group that is called Detection of Indoor Airborne Chemical and Biological Agents has put together a group of experts that is studying exactly how to combine the available sensors to detect chemical and biological agents, and where to place sensors and how many of them and for which scenarios. Therefore, they've put together experts that have also used computer-aided fluid dynamics to understand where it's better to place this sensor so as to make sure that you detect them in due time, because this is exactly what we want. I'm fairly confident that this kind of studies that will be published in March 2 will also lead to certain awareness and will highlight certain gaps in standardization where we could decide that a new standards is needed for having an harmonized approach on where to place sensor, where they work better. So another time, quality in what we do so as to be very proactive and so to maximize the use of technology. As I said, there will be a guidance for security managers on how to establish sensoring system for indoor airborne chemical and biological threat, but they also come with a report on gap for research and standardization. Therefore, I invite you to browse also, very frequently, every now and then on the NCIP website, since this report will be published in March 2019. Moving forward, we also have a group on detection of explosive and weapon in secure location. The group is being put together as we talk, and the intention is to produce a EU-level guidance on screening vehicle at checkpoint. You can understand that this is a very sensitive issue. Therefore, we are trying hard to put together the right experts to address this kind of events and to check whether some also standardization could be needed in this field. Furthermore, we have another group on resistance of structure against explosive effect. They've already worked on the revision of an existing standards on blast-loaded window, and they are working on a new concept of a procedure that doesn't exist related on a framework of the risk assessment components for building design standard. Therefore, as you can see, this group has already addressed issue of print standardization and has contributed to the development and revision of an existing standard, and is also working on a new item that could lead to a new standard. Also in radiological and nuclear threats to critical infrastructure, the group is now capitalizing on previous work on the new list mode data format standard that has been developed following a pre-normative research completed by this thematic group, and the new work that is being carried out right now and will finish in March 2019 is about novel detection technology, robotics, and reachback, so how to support the field team from remotely. A couple of sentences also on two other groups. This is most likely the last group established by the ENCEP, and is about physical security. It's called Early Warning Zones for the Protection of Critical Infrastructure. It was previously called virtual fencing because there is a concept behind this group to put together technology that allows infrastructure operator to extend a little bit the area they are monitoring so as to prevent certain events that may disrupt a critical infrastructure or a given asset. Basically, this group has been created on previous experience on the ENCIP on 2 thematic groups that were running before on applied biometrics for the security of critical infrastructure and video analytics and surveillance for CIP. And up to now, this group is discussing many issues related the possibility to put together technology in seamlessly, in a smooth way, so as to extend the capabilities of infrastructure operator to monitor certain areas that are very important to keep at bay, because from there, some events could be triggered. And so as to extend a little bit the boundaries that are getting monitored because of the sensitivity of certain specific infrastructure. We've been collaborating with 3 operators of critical infrastructure, mainly in the public transport sector. We have developed with them a concept of operation so as to put together a technological response to the specific need. And on top of that, we are also reviewing all the standards available that cover this specific use of technology, plus ethical and legal issues related, of course, to data protection and video surveillance. This group is very actively working on their report. It will be due in March 2019. They are coming all toward the end of this life cycle of the ENCIP. And it will be very interesting since this group has found out that there may be a gap in a legislation. So the ENCIP is not only covering standard issue of pre-standardization, but also potential gaps in the legislation where the union may want to work in the future. And last but not least, cybersecurity. As I said, we have also a partnership with DG Connect to support the cybersecurity certification framework. That the proposal for regulation aims at bringing live very soon. This proposal was published in September 2017, but the ENCIP was already dealing with cybersecurity of industrial automation control system from something along the end of 2013. Therefore, given the experience of the ENCIP in this field, we have developed for Connect a feasibility study of a specific scheme for components of industrial automation control system, so the certification of these components. And from January 2019, we will be working on a pilot that will lead to the creation of a usable scheme under this umbrella. What I want to show you is, as my last slide, is how research and feasibility studies can get along with standardization. We have been in contact with standardization bodies, European standardization body, since the beginning of this action. We've been in contact with Cybersecurity Coordination Group of Sensenelec. We have been talking to them quite a lot. They've been involved in this project. Therefore, what we expect, what we are negotiating with them, is that they will follow the pilot from a very close perspective. As you see, I mentioned TC13, because we are quite confident that 2 of the quality monitoring technique of a certification scheme that would like to operate at a wider scale like the EU are that the skills and the approach of the people in the labs testing the product and the final evaluation should be harmonized. If you manage to harmonize the way the labs approach the evaluation and the way the evaluation is done, you can really create a European framework. Otherwise, if you create a patchy approach in which one lab is doing different from others, and in the same framework, you will have someone who will be very unhappy, or someone trying to go through a lab that is taking an easier approach. And we cannot accept that because the framework is meant to create harmonization in Europe. And here I wanted to demonstrate how much research and standardization go together, because standardization will for sure provide the response to or how to foster quality in what we do for certifying the cybersecurity feature of these components that will be installed in our critical infrastructure. I hope I have provided an interesting presentation. I'm open to questions, of course. You can reach out the ERNCEP by browsing on our website. We have also our functional mailbox, and I also look at that. If you have further questions apart from the one that you'll give to me during the conference, I thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much, Alessandro. We are running a little bit out of time. If there is one question, now it's the time for it, or during the coffee break will also be available. If not, I would just make a remark that this was just a highlight of the excellent work of the ERNCIP. There's a lot more to it, and there is a very strong link also to the EU CBRN action plan. So the policy side of security in Europe. So I will now hand over to the last speaker, Martin de Maupeou. Go ahead. Let me just introduce you briefly. Sorry. So, Martin is a consultant at CEIS. Since 2011, I'll hand over this one. He specialized in issues related to the European research and innovation policy. He acted as a project leader on studies about standardization and also under the Bridge 2 project, and he will now make his presentation.
Thank you very much, and thank you to the CoU management team for inviting us with my colleague Fleur to this discussion. So much of our work has already been introduced by Luc in his presentation. So I will now take the few minutes that are left to present some of the findings and give you a taste of what we have done for the last months. With the objective to look back at what have been done in a European research project in the field of standardization. And yes, maybe the slide only mentions CIS, but we have conducted the study also with our partner EY. And the initial objective was to gather and analyze facts about standardization. So it was truly to try to understand what has concretely been done in a European research project that had the objective to deliver on standardization. And the initial need of the Bridge 2 project was that they were a bit lacking visibility on what is done in this field in the numerous projects that have standardization components. A few words about how we implemented the study. So we have conducted more than 130 interviews, and we have divided our interviews according to 4 different audiences. So the main audiences was the project with the standardization aspect, which have involved national standardization bodies as a full partner or as a subcontractor or in an advisory board. So this was the initial sample of project, and we have built another sample of project with project addressing standardization but not involving an NASB. And we have also tried with this objective to also assess the added value of standardization bodies in European project. We have built also this second sample with the objective to compare also. So we took projects addressing the same core topics. We took projects from the same sectors, and all this kind of thing that allow us to try to identify some similarities and some differences. And finally, we have also some few projects not addressing standardization to also provide a complementary input on why do some projects do not address standardization. And we also try to better understand how does the project officers or do the evaluators that are in charge of monitoring, of evaluating the project, how do they perceive the importance of standardization, and what do they see in their project, what is delivered. As Luc said, we are now finalizing the study, and we will come up with a nice report, hopefully by the end of the month. We have also some validation workshop. We also try to not only engage with project holders, but also with, of course, the standardization bodies, the experts but also the experts from the European Commission, the GRC, DG Grow, and DG Connect, and all these units that have important interest in standardization. Just a broad look at the project, the sample of project that we have interviewed. So we had a good balance between H2020 and FP7 project. So FP7 project with also the objective to look at the mid and long-term impact of standardization. But also H2020 to see what are the current challenges and what is the current state of standardization in project. Interestingly, the interviewees were mainly project coordinators, but also were mainly organization, research and technology organization, and industrial players, which are obviously more concerned and more interested by standardization in this project. And if we look at the sector representativeness, we see that security, which is the main topic today, because of course I should have mentioned it, but our study covers all the sectors, most of the sectors of the framework programs. But security is very well represented in our study, even though it is not the thematic which has the most important budget, because if we compare to energy, ICT, else, there are much more projects funded under this thematic. But there is a strong interest in our study from projects in the field of security. Maybe because the demand for standardization is more important in this field. Maybe because the requirements in the work program is also very important in the security work program. I will now summarize all some of the findings from our study, and to present these findings, I will go throughout the life cycle of a European project, from the initial reason at the proposal stage, the initial reason for addressing standardization, to the benefits that were drawn from these activities, and also provide few insight on this interaction and we had with the demand side. If we look first at the reason to address standardization, it appears that there are multiple, that there are different and sometimes multiple reasons to address standardization in a European project. But among these multiple reasons, the main reason is to support and to ensure the success of the exploitation and the market strategy, with 30% of the replies. Another important reason highlighted by the interviewees is to stick to the requirement of the call also. And then also the last one is to facilitate the conduct of the research activities. So in line with this finding, we also found that 75% of the project funded under a call topic mentioning standardization addressed this specific topic because it was a requirement of the call. So there is definitely a big role played by the call topic in the decision to address or not address standardization. And also, we also found that, and it is what we draw also from the interviews, that standardization rather play is instrumental in the project rather than an end result, because it is seen as necessary to conduct the project activities, to contribute to the marketization and to the exploitation phase of the project, but it's not, in very few cases, it was the main end objective of the project. And if we look finally at what we call the counterfactual approach, so interviewing project which decided not to address standardization, the main reason why they did not address standardization is that it was not a key objective, obviously, so it was not necessary to conduct the project, and also, in some cases, it was perceived as a potential obstacle to the research activities for different reasons, but because maybe, of course, you have to make choice, and if you choose to dedicate some resources to standardization, it will be less resources for research. And also because addressing and integrating your project in the standardization framework may also reduce the innovation potential of the project. If we now look at what is performed in the project, so the deliverables and the activities, we see that a majority of projects use existing standard in their project for their research activities, and we have 21% of the project which develop, revise, or propose new standards. But here we see that only 2 of the projects that we have interviewed delivered a formal standard. So we are really with project doing some pre-normative work. And in this regard, we also have 80% of the project which are drafting requirements or specification for possible future standards. If we look at what we call Sensenec product, so this includes, of course, a European standard, but also a technical report and some technical specification. We see that 70% of this project produced one of these products, and that the most represented deliverable is the CoU, so the Sensenec workshop agreement, which is dedicated and also, as Luc mentioned, which is tailored to the need of a research project. If we focus on the project which have not involved a national standardization body, this project mostly deliver recommendation or requirements for future standard, which can have a very diverse format and content. And one last point, project were also asked about the easiness of delivering on implementing standardization activities, and 50% of this project actually encountered difficulties, also highlighting the complexity sometimes and the difficulty that this project have to deliver in this field. If we now look at the perception and the role of the standardization bodies, because as I mentioned, this study was a lot about assessing the role of, or the potential role of national standardization bodies in project. When we look at the partners in charge of standardization, we see that first we have 4 main standardization bodies involved in this project, 87% of the project for the German, the Dutch, and the Spanish, and in FP7, the SEN. So there is also disparities between the different national standardization bodies. We also found a very good level of satisfaction among the interviewees about their collaboration with the NSBs. And if we look at the reason and the grounds on which the NSBs are involved, it turns out that the nationality, the expertise of the NSB, and their knowledge of framework program, their technical knowledge of the framework program, is very much taken into account. 2 minutes? Oh, okay. No, no problem. One. Okay, okay, but when we look at projects that are not involving not involving NSB, the interesting point to see is that it was not even considered during the proposal phase. So most of these projects do not have a partner in charge of standardization. On this slide, I think this was already highlighted by Luc. There is a perceived link between the importance of standardization and the need and the technological maturity of the project. This can be seen when we look at the deliverables and when we look at the activities that are performed in this project. And finally, even though the time constraint is very often highlighted by the project as one of the main reasons for not addressing standardization, it turns out that with projects involving NSB, this difficulty is much less important. If we look at the benefit and the result, I would say that once again, marketization and the support for the exploitation is the most important benefit that this project draw from standardization. However, there is a lack of follow-up, which was pointed out by the interviewees. And for example, if we take the example of the CWA, only 4 projects having delivered the CWA had follow-up activities for this outcome. And an important point is also that CWAs are very often not turned into a standard. Oh, okay, I think I will skip this slide and go to the last one. So in our study, we have also come up with some recommendation, with some more detailed finding about what could be done to improve the situation of standardization and to also leverage on all the successful activities that we have identified. And I would mention that there is often a lack of awareness of standardization among the partners, that sometimes partners are not aware to what to deliver, who to mobilize, and what to do in terms of formal standardization. And in this regard, I would say that the main advantage of having an NSB in the project is to navigate through the complex world, or at least the perceived complex world of standardization. And this is one of the main benefits that is drawn by this project. Okay, thank you for your attention. It's 15.
Thank you very much, Marta. Sorry that we were rushing you. I would take one very quick question. Otherwise, we're all going to be available in the coffee break. I think that's preferable. I see Philippe saying yes. So very quickly, I would like to thank the speakers. I think it was an excellent set of presentations. It was a pity we didn't have more time for it, I think. And it highlights very well the market impact that you can achieve when you really enhance the participation of the standardization bodies and of the industry from the start in the research projects that are funded in security. It's also very interesting to see how expert groups, a little bit independently from the projects, can really have an impact on the horizon scanning of what can be the future or immediate needs of research for standardization in security. So thank you very much. I hope you enjoyed it, and will be available in the coffee break or by mail. Thank you.
Yeah, sorry to rush. The issue is that we have to leave this room at 5 o'clock sharp. And I think that next time I will suggest speakers to have a standardized time, speaking time. Because, well, standardization is just enthusiastic that we tend not to look at our watch. So next time we will be a little bit more tough. So next, we will be reconvening in 15 minutes because we need to catch up with the time, and we need really to get out from this room, if possible, as quickly as possible at 5 o'clock. Thank you very much. So have a quick coffee break, please, and reconvene in 15 minutes. Thank you.
Is this operational? Yes, it is operational. Thank you. So, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. In this third panel, panel 3, entitled Coordination Needs, we will discuss with our distinguished guests the next step, the future steps in terms of the structural dialogue is needed in order to contribute to speed up and to improve the whole process. During the whole day, on panel 1 and on panel 2, we will be well aware about the different mechanisms that support standardization. From the formal standardization, the Technical Committee of Sensenelec 391, to the Security Sector Forum, and also the gaps identified during the studies of Bridget and on behalf of SAIS colleges. So we do have a lot of material, and all these give us, let's say, the opportunity in order to proceed in further synergies and collaborations. So in this case, if I will be able to have my slides. Well, yeah, coordination needs. As I said before, there are many mechanisms that support the standardization efforts in European level on behalf of several policy DGs, but also, as I said before, from the formal standardization area and also from the research and innovation community. And today, we will have the distinguished speakers that you had already heard in the panel 2, Mrs. Patricia Kobart, and also Dimitris Diamandopoulos from DG CoU, P3, which is the unit responsible for standards for growth. And also, we do have the honorable guest, Edvardas Mazekis, from European Defence Agency, in order to share their experience from the standardization activities. There are a lot of questions, since, as you see in the slide, we have several key players in the standardization world. So, for example, on behalf of DG CoU, the policy DG, which is responsible for the growth of internal market, we do have the annual work program for standardization. We do have the initiatives of European Defence Agency, and we do have the we are injected the standardization terms in the projects of Horizon 2020 and FP7. So in the end, we will have the opportunity to be aware from Philippe Covavillé for this new initiative of the community of users for the next year for the structured dialogue on behalf of DG Home. Also, this direct action or the STAIR for security will be a new instrument, a new mechanism in support of the standardization. As I said before, we will have answers from our speakers in terms of who are the actors in any case, what is the process, the results, what we learned so far, what is missing, what is suggested, where the mechanism is efficient, or which are the necessary synergies to build up, and in the end, how it could be better linked with other mechanisms. So, from Philippe, we will hear about how we could better synchronize, standardize, harmonize this dialogue on standardization in the community of users framework from 2018 and onwards. And I'm, let's say, happy in order to call Dimitris Diamandopoulos to share his insights, grow insights about the annual junior work program as a fundamental instrument in the standardization for policy DGs. Dimitris, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Catherine. I represent the unit who is dealing with standards. That means we are managing the relationships with the 3 European standardization organizations, that is CEN, CENELEC, and ETSI. And we coordinate the standardization policy and the standardization mandates to these organizations. Our DG is DG who develops the industrial policy. So we see security and defense from industrial aspect and how they can support to how they can support our industrial policy. So the annual Union Work Program for European Standardization is the tool by which we set the political priorities. Because here you discuss a lot of topics which are technical, but here we speak for political priorities, priorities at high level. Its origin came in the period of 2010, 2011, following an impact assessment. We diagnosed that between the time that the Commission develops, makes a directive or a regulation, and the time that goes a mandate, there is a gap. So the standardization community and industry are not aware when the Commission is going to propose a request for standards. Therefore, the Union Work Program responds to this gap. It is a planning tool. That was the initial problem that we had to tackle. And when the regulation was adopted, Article 8 of the regulation foreseen here's all what the annual Union Work Program is going to include. So the regulation is coming forth in 1st of January 2013, and there we published the first annual Union Work Program for the actions to be performed in 2014. The first thing is to identify strategic priorities for European standardization. And that makes the difference. The annual Union Work Program is not a repository, a placeholder where we can put actions. It is an intellectual exercise, purely intellectual exercise, because we have to see what of the needs of standardization are matching the policy priorities of the Commission. Commission is every year has a number of policy priorities, strategic priorities. And we want to see how and standardization can support these priorities. For example, the last annual Union Work Program had the mobility package. The Commission made 13 communications on proposals to improve mobility by changing the way from the tires, from platooning, from autonomous vehicles, from the fuel of the cars. So there are 13 proposals, and that was a strategic priority for European standardization. That means by putting something like in the Union Work Program, we pass a signal to industry that this cannot stay at member state level, it has to come at European level. And this is the important. So here, there are cases where we do not ask as Commission specific standards, but we say these issues deserve to be at European level. We have a policy on that, and there is a reason to be at European level, and they are to be dealt. Then, of course, in the annual Union Work Program, we identify the request for future mandates, which answer to legislative proposals, directives, regulations, where they foresee the development of standards. And these projects, they can be found in detail in the annexed staff working document. Every annual Union Work Program has a staff working document where we have a breakdown of all these proposals. One of the requirements is the international dimension. We are in Europe. But first, we have to see if international standards fit for the purpose. And if it is not, then we pass at European level. So if there are good international standards, we have to see how we can take benefit of them. The international dimension also shows what actions the Commission takes to international organizations and also to other countries. For example, to China, we have an expert, and to India, we have an expert who communicates how our system works and gives us also information how their system works. So again, this is what the regulation has asked to include in the annual Union Work Programme: strategic priorities, specific requests for European standards, and international dimension. Now, how do we perform? In the procedure it is foreseen a broad consultation of relevant stakeholders. What does it mean, relevant stakeholders? That means we don't go everywhere. We have designated stakeholders. First are the European Standardization Organization, and they deserve because these are the tools who implement the policies. So they have to be consulted, and we have to listen if they can do or not. These are CEN for general standardization, CEN-ELEC for electrotechnical aspects, and TETSI for ICT. Then we have this regulation has given a status to the organizations representing SMEs, workers, trade unions, environmental and consumer interests. And we need them to be inside because this is a part of every policy. So we don't want to develop standards that after contradict these interests. Of course, the consultation of member states is crucial. With member states we meet through, there is a comitology before we send a mandate. We meet there, the member states, and we also ask their opinion through this committee. And we have done in 2016 the joint initiative on European standardization with more than 100 participants, aiming to find out what is going well, what is going wrong, and how can we improve it. So this community, these participants are also informed to give their input. The joint initiative is going to give the results at the end of 2019. So we don't know what will be the follow-up after. So these are industry participants who are in the joint initiative. So again, the consultation concerns, and it is simultaneously consultation of 5 weeks, the European standardization organizations, the organization representing SME workers, consumers, environmental, member states, and participants to the joint initiative. During these 5 weeks, they have to give us their input on the topics which the annual Union Work Programme will have, on the topics, on the request for standards and general topics. And now I have to, this is the point where a lot of people misunderstand. There is the planning, which I said before, which is the technical part. We need to have a planning. But the annual Union Work Programme is a policy document. That means it's a policy communication of the Commission, which endorses and gives an impetus on standardization. So standardization, the planning is only one part. The Commission has done 10 priorities. This Commission has 10 priorities. And every action, we have to see which priority it supports and how. And this is one of the criteria for to give something in the annual Union Work Programme. And then every year, the Commission makes a work program. And we see how standardization can support this work program. So the annual Union Work Programme is a policy communication of the Commission. Derives from standardization, but is a policy communication. The Commission has the political responsibility, the College has the political responsibility for that. And the criteria for entering something is to fit in the Commission work program and to fit to the 10 Commission priorities. So if a sector is not at that moment a top priority, then if there is a regulation, we shall ask standards. But in the main text, we cannot have it. So defense and security appear to the last union work programs, and this shows how much interesting is the Commission on that. So it's not a coincidence. We have 2 paragraphs, 2 references on defense and on security. That means the Commission gives big support and has a big interest on these topics. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dimitrios. It is worthy to say that the whole process of how the annual union work program is formulated is uploaded to the website of DG CoU, so it is easy to reach and to see the whole text.
Yes, this I have to clarify. Thank you very much. It is through the notification system. It is published always in the Commission website. If you make a Google search annual union work program, you will find it.
Thank you very much. If there are some questions for Dimitrios, please proceed. Otherwise, I will take the privilege to ask. Okay, yes, please.
Do not have a microphone.
Thank you.
Thank you. I think it is important for the Commission, when issuing standardization mandate, to make a clear distinction between standards which are in support of legislation and standards which are in support of policies, without mentioning specifically the legislation. And in both cases, it is very important for the Commission to specify its objectives, because in my mind, writing a standard must be in the context of reaching a specific objective. Otherwise, you can end up with standards who do not fulfill their supposed role. So this is my advice, and maybe there can be some reactions from the Commission. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment. So, Dimitrios, if you want to say something.
Yes, the procedure is ongoing. There are improvements, and the latest mandates are discussed with the ESOs. And if someone sees how are the mandates now, how are the mandates before, they will understand that there is a lot of legal work before making a mandate today.
Thank you. So I think that if we do not have any other question, it's my turn to address a question to Dimitrios. So how exactly is expected to contribute in this effort the new 2 commissions' communications, the communication on harmonized standards, enhancing transparency and legal certainty for a fully functioning single market, and the communication for the single market in a changing world, a unique asset in need of renewal political commitment. So these 2 initiatives, how is expected to contribute? Or
I will speak just for the HAS. The HAS has to clarify the problems with, there are some problems with the standards which are, the references are cited in the official journal. So the Commission there has done 4 actions. First, to solve the backlog of the unpublished standards. Second action is to streamline the procedures. That means the procedures, there will be a specific procedure for publication. Then the Commission is going to work together with the stakeholders to make a guidance document. And fourth is going to also to reinforce the system of the consultants who verify the compliance of the standards with the requirements, essential requirements of legislation.
Thank you, Dimitrios. It is worthy also to say that HAS is the harmonized standards consultants that are available from DG CoU. So if there is no other question, let's proceed with the second speech. So I welcome Mr. Edvardas Mazekis from European Defence Agency in order to be informed for the EDA initiatives in the standardization world. Mr. Edvardas Mazekis is a Deputy Director Cooperation Plan Planning and Support Directorate and head of the unit Airworthiness, Standardization, Certification in the European Defence Agency. He is a Major General, was Director of the NATO Standardization Office from 2014 until a retirement from the military service in February 2018. He graduated as a fighter pilot from Military Academy in 1983, and he has also graduated from the Military Academy from the German Armed Forces in 1997 and from USA National Defense University in 2003. Mr. Edvardas Mazikis, the floor is yours. Thank you that you are here.
Thank you very much. I think this microphone doesn't work. Then I will borrow this one. Good afternoon. European Defence Agency. How many of you heard that name before you came here today to listen to me? Okay, that's more than I expected. That's good. So we are probably a unique body in the European Union which deals with defense issues. We are not part of the Commission. We are subordinated to the Council. Our steering board is on the ministers' level, only agency in the European Union. And we are not paid from European Union budget. We are paid from the budget which is brought by participating member states. All actually member states except Denmark. Denmark decided not to participate in common security and defense policy in the EU. So it's the right of the nation, of the member state, and we have all member states except Denmark. One of our work areas is standardization. And one of the important documents which was approved not so long ago is a EU global strategy, actually, which we think is a very good document because it mentions also standardization. And it talks that capabilities should be developed with maximum interoperability. Interoperability is actually probably the military term which is now more and more used in civilian world because it is a good word. How you can act together, how you can do something together, interoperability. And we also like to see that in the EU global strategy, standardization, certification, and test and evaluation are named as a critical enablers. I think it's a right label to this very important activity. And in European Defence Agency, we are doing standardization in close relation with CDP, its Capability Development Plan. Sorry for this acronym in my slide, which is probably not very wide known, but it's Capability Development Plan. And also we are taking into account R&D, research and technology developments, also trying to deepening defense cooperation and coherence with NATO. This is also one of the important cornerstones in the defense standardization because member states are keeping very close eye on that we are not duplicating anything or doing something which would then require additional resources and efforts. And our standardization actions, it's actually top-down standardization process. We are using EDSTAR system. I will tell a bit later about this. And the main slogan or the main motto for us is civilian as possible, military when needed. So we're trying to use civilian standards first and then create military if needed. I have here a very busy slide. I do not have any slides yet. I'm sorry. I was so sure that they are changing behind my back. Okay, that was slide for the part where I was talking about EU global strategy. I can now change that to another slide. Okay, now I have to go back. So this is very busy slide, but I've chosen that slide just to show for you how currently, in the current time, a brigade looks. Brigade is a military unit which is normally one of the main building blocks in any military operation. If in 1970, brigade was normally one nation's creation. Nowadays, it's an example, 2018, we have 17 nations in single brigade. That means that we urgently need standardization. Otherwise, they cannot be interoperable. They cannot act together. We talk only about flags now, 17 flags. But then if we take in account equipment, weapons, or systems, then standardization is needed even more. Then if we talk about common logistic and supportability, then again, this is avoidance of parallel expenditures if we can standardize and make it interoperable. So we approved European Defense Standardization Strategy this year. Okay, right slide. We set strategic objectives like to enhance the awareness in the field of standardization, of defense standardization, to be able to select the most relevant standards for the defense, also to master the portfolio of all EU defense standards, and also interact with European and global standardization related activities. This is also a very important issue. Key principles are transparency, openness, coherency, and reliability. I'll show now you a slide, a pyramid. On the left side, you see very military terms like strategic, operational, tactical. That's for my military colleagues to understand that topic. But in general, we're talking about strategic objectives, about strategic lines of action, and about roadmap. And on the bottom, expert communities. Now, dotted line, if you see dotted line, very close to the first, that yellow-greenish line, this is where we now. We approved the strategy, now we are working on the implementation plan, and we will then develop policy. So it's still a long way to go. We are at the beginning of the long journey. And now I will show you the slide about the governance, because this actually topic is about standardization governance. Okay, my finger is not strong enough to push the button. Okay, on the top you see European Defence Agency, European Union Military Staff, and Commission also. In this bubble we have a material standardization group. Material with E as a second last letter. That means it's not only material, but a bit wider. But we will change that name because it irritates many stakeholders, especially if you translate to other languages. In English, you can define between material and materiel. In other languages, the difference disappears. So, underneath, you see European standardization organizations like CEN, CENELEC, ETSI. They were interacting with us, with the defense community through DSCG, Defense Standardization Coordination Group, which probably will be closed, saying probably because decision is not taken, the final one, but during the last 4 years, we were not able in this group to create any hybrid standard. Hybrid, that means that civilian, which can be used in the military world and vice versa. We will change that, I hope, to technical committee, which will allow us a bit more flexibility sometime. We have also material standardization harmonization team, which is a charter-based organization where we have NATO, we have other nations which are interested in European standardization, but they are not part of European Union. So the picture looks simple, but just needs a lot of changes in the future, I hope. And we are now working actively, especially with that plan for implementation of strategy. We will revise and relook how our governance model in European defense standardization should look like in the future. There will be probably not revolutionary changes, but some changes should be that the system should start to work. ETSTAR. It's European Defense Standard Reference System, actually where we are collecting all best practice standards. And at ETSTAR we have some working groups which are checking all existing standards and picking up the best. Actually, this is our main product, the best standards or best usage standards, which we are selecting from different sources. If you look now to the standards which are placed on the EDSTAR, you will find about maybe 20% NATO standards. Other are civilian, from DIN, from AFNOR, or other standardization developing organizations. And EDSTAR is actually our main deliverable if we talk about defense standardization in EU, because member states agreed that all operational standards will be used NATO standards, just not to duplicate and not to create difficulties for the member states, which are member states in the both organizations. So, taking into account that we are running out of the time, I will stop here. If you have any question, I'll be very happy to answer.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mozekis. From the audience, do you have any question for the EDA? From the panel? So in this case, just a short question. Do you have in mind how many standards identified as dual-use standards in the EDSTAR? If you have to give us an example. Thank you.
As I mentioned, in EDSTAR, we have about 80% civilian standards, which definitely are dual use because they are actually civilian by the nature, but we picked them as a best practice standards also for defense sector. So these 20 which are from NATO standards, they are, I would name, poorly military usage, but the main approach is do as much as possible and use civilian standards. We tried, as I mentioned, to create hybrid standards, the definition created by Commission, but so far we are not very much successful in this endeavor. But I hope in the future, anyway, we will create a hybrid standard from scratch, which is designated to be dual use. So.
Okay. Great, thank you. So if we do not have any other question, let's proceed with the speech of Mrs. Patricia Compart. In terms of the coordination, support action, strengthening standardization, stakeholders connection. Patricia, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Thank you. Sorry, it's me again. So I'm here because I was asked to present to you CSA. It was already mentioned today, this morning and this afternoon. So it's a project that will be launched in January. And it's very important that you know that this exists, and you will understand why. So the name is Strengthening Standardization Stakeholders Connections. Let me set again the background for those who weren't there, and it's another background than the one from this morning. Again, the context of this project is increasing globalization, climate change, security threats growing in scale and sophistication, and we have to address that. A strong demand from European citizens to increase their security accordingly to these new stakes. The crisis and disasters ignoring boundaries and plans. Multi-stakeholders crisis and disasters response, so we have to be able to interact concretely. Also, we know now, and of course DGO will probably approve, security is a market with strong growth perspective. And currently the market is very fragmented. So we really have to benefit from the situation we're facing and the fact that we are able to produce very, very interesting and relevant solutions and innovative solutions to address these particular needs. Of course, again, specific challenges of Europe having 28 governments and most of the security issues being under member states' responsibility, so it's fragmented. And also, what's also important to understand is that what's new, what's this initiative of pre-standardization is bringing there, is that we want to have the coordination needs and the European investment focused on the user's needs. because this is how we will, this is the path to have all these issues sorted out. Standardization is a lever to coordinate all stakeholders involved in security and resilience, but we really do need to improve pre-standardization. There has been lots of pre-standardization produced for many, many years. We have seen some very interesting ones today, for instance. What we intend to do with this project, so this is the call that you may have seen. So it is the one that Luc talked about. It is coordinated by CEN, CENELEC, ETSI, and GRC. So all three standardization, European standardization bodies and GRC. So let me talk to you about what's crucial, what you have to understand there. We have to do different things. So we have two important work packages here. First work package would be to set up a platform, so it's what we call the STAIR platform, platform for information exchange on users' needs. And to do this, we will use any available information, any available validated pre-standardization work that has been done. It is important to understand it's a single entry platform. It will be the one tool. It will be compulsory to get through this platform. So of course, everyone is welcome. So we're going to take everybody's work and look at it. But the focus will be, let's look at what the needs are from the users. And then after this, we'll find a way to describe these needs, to set up the priorities in order to be able to have a pre-normative research that is focused on the needs, calls for investments, innovation that are focused on the needs, and of course be able to build a standardization framework that will be online with the needs of the users. So the other objective here is to have, to complement this platform by improving the standardization processes, mostly within CEN, CENELEC. These processes, well, as you may understand, they're not known. They're not shared. People don't know how that standards exist and how they can use it, how they can join, and what kind of work we're doing and why we're doing it and what results we can achieve. So we have to work on this. And we also have to develop the standardization tools in order to have them fit the needs of security and resilience users, which is not the case now. They've been designed for people, selling devices or, any products. But here we're speaking about security issues, about things that are very processes that are complicated, that need to be integrated, that are often politically related. So there are things that you cannot treat like products. And we also need to have a process of validation from some of the work we do, either because we want to improve European policy, or because it's a very touchy issue and we want to make sure that the member states which will be represented by NSBs in such case, or maybe also the council agree on the fact that, yes, we should be developing standards on this and this and this issue, and this would be the framework of it, and the standard should be applied. And in such case, having all these issues sorted out in advance, we'll be able to, well, have a roadmap, know where we're going, know what kind of means we would need, but also maybe use more fast-track procedures, because we would have done the preparatory work altogether previously. So, so in short, the STAIR platform will be the only and permanent mechanism for security pre-standardization, the only one. The focus would be the need of security policymakers, managers of security in any kind of organization, and the first responders. The suppliers and the research will be involved, of course, but we will focus on the needs of their customers, because this is how they will be able to develop the market, because it would, you know, the offer would fit the needs of their customers. Also, yes, that's also important. We will be able to identify the needs and set priorities. If I look at all the initiative here, I see many different set of priorities. Some are matching, some are not. So I just want to have one, and I just want it to be shared. And this is how we're going to be able to work all together. And also, we can support the European Union to identify and assess items that would need some support, financial support, some research, in order to improve the solutions we need to implement. So, so it's the grant is to grant to identify beneficiary coordination and support actions. The budget is 0.90 million. It's beginning in January 19 until it's for 2 years. So it'll be ready for next program. We will be all set to have to roll on for the next budget, which is perfect timing, thanks to Philippe. See, so this, I already talked about this. Official start on 1st January. Okay, so if you have any question, I can answer, but also I should say probably DG Home can answer because it's their call. Thank you.
Thank you, Patricia. So if we have any question for the Patricia? If not, okay, yes, Andre.
Otherwise, maybe I can express, so without a microphone, what would be the indicative budget of one research proposal? Is it in the order of 100,000 euros or less or more? Thank you.
Philippe, could you please help us on this?
I think you misunderstood. It's not a call for proposals. It's a coordinated action helping DG Home to gather information on standardization-related projects, which are actually funded under other calls, and help us to bring actually different stakeholders in defining standardization needs. So we don't fund research projects. There is a call for proposals which is open, DRS3, which is open in 2019, 2020, and for this I don't have the budget in mind, but it should be around 6 million, something like that, because it's a research innovation. No, it's innovative actions. But well, I can provide you with the details later on if you wish, but you have to distinguish this action, which is a pure coordinated action, from the calls which is ongoing.
Yes, please.
Thank you. I have something between comment and question. I'm not sure how it will end. My name is Russell. I'm from Polish Platform for Homeland Security, but I'm representing here iLead project. It's one of the coordination and support actions projects. It's led by the Patrick Padding from Netherlands Police, and it's a consortium. Most of them are from law enforcement agencies, police from different countries, like national police from Spain. And the outcomes of we have one of the work packages which I'm responsible for is standardization and procurement. And we have a lot of outcomes, like we have a lot of standardization requirements, needs, and which are defined by the practitioners, I mean police officers. And now we had 5 meetings, and in next 4 years we'll have 20 more meetings. Each of the meeting is dedicated to each different topic, and we have like plenty of requirements, needs, gaps. Now we are analyzing this information, and we are thinking to whom we should send it. I had the opportunity to talk with a representative of European Commission. We are starting sending this information to relevant stakeholders. We think that these stakeholders are the right one. But at the moment, I was just checking the database, which was presented by the representative of the European Defense Agency, and I was thinking that maybe the problem in area of security, I mean law enforcement agencies, the problem is that there is no one place, there is no one institution which is umbrella for all. And we are sharing the information between all of those institutions. And here, when we see how NATO is operating it's so simple. It's just the one place. So this is the question and comment.
Well, thank you very much for your question. I forgot to mention this, but of course, knowing that we want to build this platform on the real needs of the users, one of the source we would value would be recommendations from the practitioners' networks, including iLead. So if you already have, requirements on pre-standardization, you can send them to this platform, and we would consider them, and we would all together see how we can set them up and prioritize, and that would be part of our deliverables. And at the end, we would probably need to develop these standards, and then again, we would turn to the experts interested in having them and implementing them. So those people should be the ones writing them. So this is the purpose: is to have standards that are relevant to the people actually conceiving and enforcing security policies within Europe. And of course, it's the case for law enforcement. So you have a single entry point. We will gather with, all DGs or agencies or projects that would have produced some pre-standardization work. But if there's only one place, it's this one. So thank you very much for your question.
Yes, thank you, Patricia. I would like to add something, which is, well, I hear again the reference to NATO. It's not the same political animal, NATO and EU. Don't. If it would be so simple that EU would make it, we have still 28 countries. which have decisions and NATO has a certain number of countries, but they are much more structured than we are with respect to standardization. And here they are dealing with defense-related standards. So we may indeed build up some dialogue with them, but it's not straightforward. You know, we are not working in the same area. We will do that, and I think that the coordination support action may play a role with EDA. I think it was very interesting what Eduardas mentioned, and as well with DG Group, because we will be in a situation where we will get requests from policy units, from civil protection, crisis management, security, which have to be related to decisions that they will help us to take. Is it something which is deserving to have a mandate requested by the Commission, and then we will be feeding the annual work program, so we will be defining this? Or is it something which requires pre or connotative research? Then we have to take the decision to establish a call, to open a call for proposal dedicated to that. Is it something which is more defense? So maybe EDA could take it over, or NATO. There are a lot of things which a little bit, in a way, is still in a blue zone. You know, we are not yet sure on how to tackle that. And this action is exactly to help us in clarifying this issue. We also mentioned the difficulty of classified components of standards, which we did not yet have a solution, and it's something that we need to discuss all together. So all your inputs will be very interesting, very important, and we will build up our strategy on what we will get, actually.
Okay, thank you, Philippe. And yeah, if we do not have any other question in this moment, I will invite you here with the other speakers in order to explain to us how the next CoU, which is your vision and mission for the next community of user events, and how you are thinking to structure the dialogue with all these key actors that presented their standardization perception today. Thank you.
Thank you, Ekaterini. Well, I could not resist to have some terrifying slides. So I will have some reminding very quickly that we are, certainly you saw this kind of slides, we have to look at a very wide scope of areas in the areas of security and crisis management, and not only of areas which are gathered into the community of users, but also operational features that are actually involving a certain number of actors, policymakers, scientists, industry practitioners, and even the citizen dimension. So this is the framework in which we are developing this community of users. And as you know that we have a complex policy landscape, which we have to consider. And I have added some of the slides, so some of the components here, for example, DG Regio, which are dealing with regional policies, DG Education and Culture, which are also dealing with issues related, for example, to security of cultural heritage, DG Mare, and so on. So these are the DGs with which we are working to try to support them, their policies regarding security and crisis management with research activities. We have also intergovernmental and EU agencies, which we are working with very closely, and international organization, obviously. And we need to ensure that you, as community, are well informed about what they are doing, which is not easy. Even for us, sometimes the landscape is very complex regarding not, I would say, the development, but the way these policies are implemented in the member states. It's very often difficult. And what we have also is that we have a high number of EU-funded actions, and you have here actually research, including EDA Joint Investment Program. We have Horizon 20 sectorial research managed by DG Research. We have Secure Society, so more related to security and crisis management, Cultural Heritage, Joint Research Center, and a certain number of programs dealing with capacity building and education. And well, bet what happens here. We have a large number of programs, projects which may be funded in a given theme. Do you think that we are organized to give you a full picture of everything? Absolutely not. And it's not a bad willingness, it's bad because, well, contrarily to what people think. The number of people working in this program is very scarce. So when you have in a large policy, 2 people dealing with implementation and 1 or 2 people dealing with one program, we do not have too much time to have a full picture of the capacities to link, for example, research and capacity building and education. But we should do that. And what I would like to stress, I've shown this morning this mapping document, which we did, which is covering the 4 years of Horizon 2020, plus capacity building funded by Interreg, DG Regio, Interreg project, Life Plus by DG Environment, ISF by DG Home, and I forget one, which is, well, the DG Eco related project. It's already a step forward to say, okay, now we have a given theme. For example, flood risk. These are what the different programs are doing. And even in Horizon 2020, they are not necessarily bridging. And capacity building. Now what to do? Because it's a state of play. It's a fact. So next year, we need to really start bringing them together, and the community of users will do that. That is bringing projects together to establish a dialogue and say, what can you do together? Building synergies, build a critical mass, try to ensure that your research is feeding capacity building, education, and that we are actually integrated all this knowledge. Otherwise, we are duplicating efforts, we are spending a lot of money for not really giving access to this knowledge to practitioners, which is not acceptable. So what we want to do now in the future, we want to gather actors. You are here already. We have started 4 years ago, from upstream to downstream, as well as our key users. We need to ensure that we have a very good grasp of what the different policies are requiring in terms of scientific and technical support. It means also dialogue with them. We have done that, while we have colleagues here from different policy DGs who are following this and are interested to provide the recommendations about what they need. We need to ensure that in given theme, we do not miss leading projects, that they are in the room and they are meeting on a regular basis and provide concrete outputs and recommendations to you as users. What did we do and what can we do for you? And we need to have networks, and well, ILEAD is one of them, for example, networks of practitioners, think tank, projects, networks, and so on, helping us to bring these 2 worlds together and looking at the market dimension. That is, it's not only support to policy, it's also anticipating what research can lead, if research can lead to the market, that is having a links with SMEs and industry, while matching the needs of practitioners. We have no choice but to all work together. The citizen dimension is a cherry on the cake, actually, is if we are able, and we are not able to do that now, if we are able to explain to someone in the street that what we are doing is really good for them, in simple words, with this mess, well done. We are not yet in this situation. So we need to also interact with, I think, cities, for example, cities network, regional authorities, bring them to projects and encouraging them to participate and telling them, well, if we have demonstrations that are of, I would say, impact to citizens, I don't know, well, a chemical threat in a metro station, well, please provide us with a metro station. We will have research projects that will make a demo. And instead of having guys from the project, invite your population to come. People, volunteers from the city. And they will bridge them and they participate in the demo. And then we'll see what will be the reaction. Telling things to people in a very, very abstract thing, they will not understand. Involving them and making them participate in an exercise is something which will make a difference. It's a little bit my dream with respect to the DRS1 call for proposals, that is raising citizen awareness. But raising awareness means involving people. We have done that already with practitioners. 5 years ago, practitioners were not really involved in projects. Now it's mandatory. And we see a clear difference regarding their participation. So we need to do that like this. So now I will try to tell you what we'll do in 2019. 2019, we want to have 2 weeks with clear thematic groups being defined. And we are not yet in the situation where we can have a governance system, but we are thinking of having a strong governance for the community of users. We would like to have objectives being set very clearly and a work program for the CoU. And basically, if you have a given theme, for example, CBRN, we have different issues to cover, well, chemical accidents, health threats, explosive, well, whatever, you know, the different type of aspects and different experts, different projects that are tackling this, different events. Well, we would like to have people behind these themes saying, okay, now I take it and I will responsibilize myself to links, to liaise with different projects, different conferences, and to drain knowledge from these projects and conferences in such a way that at the end of the year, we have a very strong state of the art in the field. From the policy side, what is doing the policy, what are the needs of the policy, from the industry side, what are the expectations of SMEs and industry, from the practitioner side, what do they expect with respect to concrete output, the scientists, of course, what can they recommend regarding research topics, and maybe the citizen dimension, what we can do. And if we do that, if we are providing this kind of mechanism where we cannot meet all here in a room like this, we have to build an octopus. We have to build a community, not a club. It should not be a closed club. We have to rely on projects and different events telling, yes, you have organized a conference, which is nice. I was with you, Jean-Luc, last week in Cork in a very nice CBRN conference. And I said to our friends, well, look, what will you do with this conference? I came to Cork, you know, it was quite stormy, and we made the effort to go there. Then we have met a lot of very nice lecture, and so what? You know, the Miles Davis tune, bara, 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 this is called So What. My father was always telling me, because he's a jazz player, when I was telling him something, well, so what? What does it mean? So if we don't have an output of conferences like that, a report which says, we have met 2 days, these are the strong recommendations that we can make to different stakeholders, and it is a trace of this event. And we are bringing this knowledge to a thematic groups that will feed actually this kind of annual state of the art. If we prepare this, we can ensure that at the end of each year, security research conference where we can have 1,000 people meeting, we provide this annual state of the art to very high level people. And well, we speak about Director General, but it can be even higher if we are preparing well the ground, because here we have a critical mass. One project, one individual will not be listened. 50 projects and 20 conferences bringing feedback to an annual state of the art will be listened. And it is becoming actually a political strength. So we are playing in another field. So I would like to say that here, what we decided, I proposed, sorry, this is a lapsus. Well, the first one is the week will be between the 25th and 29th of March, and we'll have one theme on disaster risk reduction over 2 days. You see that I'm very, very looking forward to have sub-themes being looking at, for example, climate, weather, extreme events, disaster risk reduction policies and geological hazards, with different DGs that will be invited to have a very, very active role in the leadership and related projects. And why 1 day over 2 days? Because I want to have social networking every evening, you know, because this is what we make, it is where we make the difference. We are working hard in the evening. Well, I hope that tonight you will not speak about work. You are here to have a closer relationship, but human relationship. So this is the first one. Then we continue with, if it works, Yeah, sorry, I went too far. So CBRNE the day after, and here we have, you see, you will get actually this information. And so civil military cooperation, CBRN policies, chemical accident, and so on. And then we will continue with standardization coordination. So it's what I wanted to stress this. Standardization coordination, basically, it's what the Sensenelec and the coordination support action will be behind, but not only, because we will then gather projects which are dealing with research in support of civil protection related standardization and security. So here again, and the last one of the week, which will be quite a busy week, will be cybercrime and security. So this format, we hope, will be able to cover a certain number of technical things, but don't expect to have actually in-depth discussions. What we want is to ensure that the key projects, key actors are there to know each other and to establish the dialogue. And they will be asked to commit themselves to drain knowledge from the outside world, because we cannot have 500 people here. We'll have maybe 80 to 100 people, but when they will come back home, they will then provide information to the thematic group coming from different conferences and projects. So this is the format that we propose. For September, it will be protection of public spaces, then it will be critical infrastructure protection, fight against crime and terrorism, and border security. So I hope that we are covering very largely the different fields. Maybe we are forgetting some key aspects. We will fine-tune, maybe, we will see. And linked to this, we will have a consultation with policy DGs in the coming weeks, and agencies, member states, networks, and so on, to say, okay, where do you want to position yourself in the thematic groups? We would like to have you being involved and maybe leading thematic groups. It will not be, if I would do that myself, I would explode, while we say exploser en vol in French. So we need to delegate, we will do that, and we will have meetings separate from the different CoU meetings to discuss governance. There will be meeting in February, June, and October. And by governance, I mean really involving member states and key projects, and see how we can work to define a work program that should be implemented in 2020. So 2019 is a warming up. We will have the classical meeting like this, and in parallel, we will be discussing governance, so that in 2020, we make it really happen, and we are ready to start Horizon Europe in early 2021. So if it works, it means that this platform will be extremely strong regarding the different networking capacity and community building from 2021 onward. And it's a collegial thing. You have to take co-ownership of that. It's not only something that is done by the Commission, it's a collegial work. If we understand that, and that we are building this community, we are making a big difference in terms of working together. So what I would like to conclude upon is this sketch, which is synthesizing, in fact what I said. So we have the thematic groups, which are involving different representatives of policies, industry practitioners, and so on. We have events with technical workshops. It's basically what we are doing now. I11 conference, which is one conference a year, similarly to what will happen tomorrow and Thursday. Tools, technologies, online marketplace. This exists, for example, in the Encircle projects on CBRN. We should try to develop that for other fields, ensuring that we could have access to existing tool methods and so on. And the DRM CASI is also doing that for crisis management. So we have to really consolidate this. We have to involve more the networks of practitioners, existing platforms, for example, the DRM CASI. There is one platform which is also coming from Driver Plus projects, which is called CMINE. We need to really involve them in such a way that we build up a coordination board with head of thematic groups, DG representatives, and so on, with a filter function that is drafting, formatting recommendations, brief, implementation of CoU mandate, which is done at high level board, that is providing a strategic implementation plan. That is really a work program with well-set objectives, a dialogue open with member states. If we can have this animal active and dynamic, well, I think that in 20 years it will be still in place. And if I say that, it's not by, you know, a kind of blah blah. It's because I've been working at DG Environment in the water policy field. And one unique model that I saw at the Commission is the common implementation strategy of the Water Framework Directive. And it's built a little bit like that. You know, you have the water director, strategic coordination group, and then you have several working groups. I was sharing 2 of these groups with people who were really providing scientific advice, technical recommendations, NGOs, not always easy, you know, representing industry, representing ecological interests, representing a lot of things. So you need to have everybody on board, which is not that easy, but it is the only way to work. You need to put everybody in the same room and find a compromise. And when the compromise is accepted, then you can make the job. And this common implementation strategy has been put in place 1 year after the Water Framework Directive in 2001, and we are in 2018, and it's working according to a 3-year program very, very effectively, and it's informal. So we had spoken about the possibility to have an EIP, you know, European Innovation Partnership. Well, you know that we will be changing now the Commission next year. We are at the end of a Commission. Commissioners do not want to engage into bureaucratic animals. You know, they don't want to have communication because it would mean a communication to Council and Parliament. They don't want. It might. I thought that maybe it would be like, you know, a chant du cygne. But no, I was naive. They don't want. So, but it means that this EIP will remain CoU. You know, we will speak about the CoU. It will be informal, and maybe that it was a sign of the destiny. We need to have things kept at informal level, because you have the freedom of speech if you speak on your own and not necessarily for your state. So I think we will keep this and see what happens. But again, I hope that we will be all working together. And this is what I wanted to say. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Philippe. So if you have any question to address to Philippe, it's more than welcome. Otherwise, we do have a couple of minutes in order to say that these expressed and mutual agreed expectations and needs from all the key stakeholders that are presented here in the community of user events, and definitely in the near future, it is actually a validation process of these expectations and needs. So it's a part of standardization in practice, in action, and we thank you very much for this. And of course, we need you in the next conferential events on March, September, and onwards. Thank you very much, all the speakers of the panel 3, for their contribution, and definitely we will remain in touch and to explore further synergies in between us. Thank you all for your presence here and for your active participation. Thank you very much.